All right, folks, well, here we are. 3302 Grand Avenue. January 17th, 1942 was the birth date of Cassius Clay. So he lived here with his mom, Odessa O'Grady Clay. So when you hear about the champ having Irish roots in him, it came from the O'Grady side of the slave ancestry and with the Clay family. His dad was a sign painter. So you can see some of the work of his dad in different books around the house, or excuse me, around the community. And they always kept their house nice and neat in this pink color here on the house. So kind of imagine, so Muhammad became and still might be the most famous human being that ever walked the earth because of the time that he came up in. Obviously, when he came to fame, it was a very tumultuous time in the history of our country. Here's this young, black, brash dude telling the truth about the history and civil rights of our country, how he's able to go away and win a gold medal, still come back to a segregated Louisville and not be able to sit down at a lunch counter and be served because it was whites only. All throughout that time, he kept his love for his city, though. He always bragged about Louisville, and you see whenever he was introduced with his fights, it was from Louisville, Kentucky. And he would get up after he'd won, he'd talk about Louisville being the greatest city on the world, and so he always loved his hometown, and we obviously really appreciated that. So he grew up in this house with his brother, Rudy. And so Rudy is still alive. His name is Rahman, so he converted to Islam just like Cassius did to Muhammad back in the day. So you'll see Rahman around town. We call him the Rock. He's in okay shape. He's also suffering from Parkinson's. He's 2 years younger than Muhammad. I saw him last night. You know, still big, strong guy. And you'd see him right here at the house quite a bit as well. So he and Rudy grew up in this house. It was mom and dad playing games of Clue. They'd face off on that. This neighborhood was a largely black neighborhood, but not all black back in the day. The Montgomerys live across the street. Lawrence Montgomery, you might have seen him. He is the brother of Georgia Powers. Georgia Powers is the first black female senator from the state of Kentucky, and Senator Powers was a legendary figure here in our community, in our state. 3 houses down was where Alan and Wade, Wade and Alice Houston lived with their family. So what's interesting about that is you've got a Olympic gold medal winner from this house right here, and then 3 doors down, an Olympic gold medal winner with Alan Houston from the basketball team. So I don't know if there's any other place like that in the country where you've got 2 gold medalists coming from. So there's a lot of history here. This house was in really bad shape. It was bought about probably 8 or 10 years ago, Donald, by a guy from Las Vegas who wanted to turn it into a museum. He didn't really have the resources to do that. And he was joined by a partner from Philadelphia about 3 years ago, and that's when a lot of the renovation took place on this house. What they found, unfortunately, was that this is not a venture where you can make money on as a museum. So it's in kind of limbo right now. The inside of the house has been restored to the period when Muhammad or Rudy and Cassius grew up in this house back in the day. And so the house is in a little bit of a limbo. We put this historical marker here, obviously, to mark what is an incredible piece of history for our city. I think from a social standpoint, the story here is, you know, who are the current Cassius Clays in our city and other cities around the world? Because here was a guy who went to Central High School, which will be the next stop, who had a lot of ego. You know, he would be always saying, I'm going to be the greatest, I am the greatest. He'd be racing the school bus to Central High School, shadow boxing along the way. You're going to see me someday famous on the world stage, look at me. And you can imagine, we all know kids like that. It's like, come on, kid, go to school, be serious. So how do you break out of that into becoming Muhammad Ali and all that he stood for from an athletic and spiritual and social standpoint. So as we see these other young brothers and young sisters on our streets, and we think about how we can encourage them, or how we can be the mentor to them, how we can be the one to them to help them break out whatever their situation is, it's something that we all have got to look at ourselves and say, maybe I can make a difference in the life of this young person. In today's world, when you think about this old white cop and this young black dude coming together at the age of 12, and when you think about all the stuff that goes on in the country right now in terms of disproportional incarceration, what goes on in our predominantly lower income black communities with officer involved shootings, and kind of the walls that people put up between police officers and black communities, think about that kind of symbol of two people overcoming those kind of stereotypes and then leading to one of the greatest stories of all time as well. So a lot of this is about the story of Muhammad Ali, but a lot of this also is about the story of our society and how people come together to really create greatness, because what he's done for our city in terms of putting us on the map globally, and what he's done for the consciousness of our city, especially with his center and the 6 spiritual guidelines of his life, it's really something much, much bigger than boxing and much, much bigger than athletics. So we can all make a difference when we see that young person and lift them up. Okay, Donald, want to miss anything? You know, we're in the Parkland neighborhood right now in West Louisville. Think of West Louisville as kind of a donut, so we're right in the middle of West Louisville right now. West Louisville is made up of 9 neighborhoods, and so when you hear things on the news about the West End, you know, it's very misinformed. It'd be like they should say in the Parkland neighborhood, California neighborhood, Chickasaw neighborhood. So West Louisville is made up of 9 beautiful, distinct neighborhoods with fantastic people. You can see beautiful homes, walkable neighborhoods. So I'm glad everybody came out. A lot of people in Louisville won't even come west of 9th Street. They think it's some kind of scary place. West of 9th Street's a beautiful place, full of beautiful people. Unless you're doing a drug deal here at 2 o'clock in the morning, whether it's here or Shively or out in Linden somewhere, you're fine. Okay, so just beautiful people. We encourage people to get out and about around the city all the time. One last thing. When the funeral procession came down here, I mentioned earlier, when we came off of the expressway at 64 and turned right on, turned right on Ali, I guess we turned right on. It was electric, you know, so there were a lot of people along the route, but then all of a sudden, boom, you know, it was like the whole West Louisville was out and saying, we are welcoming the champ home. He's our champ. As I said earlier, he belonged to Louisville, but he really belonged to West Louisville. So the electricity going through West Louisville with the funeral procession was incredible. But when we turned left here on Grand Avenue, it was wall-to-wall people from the houses all the way to the street. And Kelly Jones, who was in charge of all of the security from LMPD and the procession, when you enter a situation like that from a security standpoint, it is the last thing that you want to do, because it is totally out of your hands at that point in time. So obviously he said, well, we got to go for it. And we were concerned about people throwing themselves in front of the procession or on the actual car itself. We planned for active shooters and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately. But it was a beautiful kind of envelope of love for the procession coming down here, where people just kind of moved toward the procession and were touching the funeral cortege and throwing roses on the cortege as well. You might remember that all the beautiful pictures of it filled with roses, and it was just really something. It was like the cars were elevating down the street and people were crying and people were shouting to the champ and coming up and shadow boxing and coming down. It was just really something. It was just this show of humanity and unity that most people had never experienced before. I don't know if we'll ever experience it again. People say it was a once in a lifetime experience. No, I think it's once in centuries experience, just because there's no people like Muhammad Ali. So I was just so proud of the way our city came together and showed the rest of the world how to do something like this. Because remember, this was when the presidential election was going on. So you had the Trump-Hillary debates going on. You had Trump vilifying Muslims. You had Trump doing all kind of divisiveness issues. And here was this message coming from Louisville that no, it's about love and it's about unity and it's about compassion and it's about respect. Last thing, think about this. the world stopped, the country stopped for Muhammad Ali, a black man and a Muslim. That shows the strength of our country and how we appreciate diversity. And I don't care what you look like, I don't care what your God is. If you're a good person, we're going to love you and we're going to respect you.
Amen. All right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Enough for me.
The greatest mayor of all time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.